Okay, so philosophy must embrace poetry. How poetry captures the difficulty of reality by John Gibson. And here we go. And as always, feel free to jump in with questions as we go. If you want to keep going on the mind simulation stuff, feel free. But I'm going to try to get through this. It is short, so we'll go quick. And as always, we rate it at the end. I'm going to try to get the rating site up soon, which I've said for a long time now. I'm sorry. I recently assigned John Ashbery's poem Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror in a philosophy course I am teaching on theories of self. I assured the students that the poem would dramatize a point about whether what the philosopher Peter Goldie calls the mess inside. Well, I've got the mess outside. I don't know what the mess inside is. The mess is a matter of many things, but in good part, it resides in the chaos of the often contradictory desires, anxieties, wants, beliefs, memories, and self-images that course through us over time, and not infrequently in the moment. It is a mess that explains many of our most tragic and or hilarious failures as actors on the stage of life, and I told my students that certain strains of lyric poetry are especially good at thinking about why this is so. After explaining ways Ashbery's poem enlivens our understanding of the cultural and psychological sources of this mess, I opened the lecture to discussion. After a pause, a student who obviously wasn't feeling it asked sincerely and more or less respectfully, is Ashbery just saying "fuck you" to the reader? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, still discussing what happens if Frank's hallucinating. Yeah. So if Ashbery is just saying to "fuck you" to the reader, who knows? Apart from the language, my student's question was not a surprise. Hers was just a ruder way of lamenting the fabled difficulty of modern lyric poetry, which for the student apparently registered as an insult rather than an invitation. If one is interested in the provenance and force of such laments, which are hardly unique to my students, Ben Lerner's The Hatred of Poetry is a good source, not least because he is a poet who finds a grain of truth in these complaints. My interest is different. I am concerned with the nature of... Look at this. We got the Matrix right here with Andrew Tate and Nietzsche. That's just weird. All right. My interest is different. I am concerned with the nature of this difficulty and why the poetic instance of it should chagrin even a captive philosophical audience. As an academic philosopher, I do not find it particularly galling or newsworthy to be told that the work of my colleagues can be found difficult or that the general public pays it little mind. Exactly, Gaudio. Now we're arguing scope. Okay. In fact, I find it a favorable coincidence of history that poets and philosophers, the two parties to Plato's ancient quarrel, will at this late date find themselves in a similar boat. Philosophers share with much cooler poets the experience of being in a present that is largely inhospitable to their practices of thought and writing, especially in the Anglophone world. What's with these ads? I have no idea. Because this is a saved version of it too. So this may be a saved version that was, scraped by a computer that had gone to a bunch of other weird sites beforehand. And this is the predictive advertising that computer with that cookie scheme pulled in. So I have no idea. This is, like I said, this is on archive. This is not the original article. So... these are saved ads, I think. Although maybe these are redone. Oh. Okay, one sec. Firefox is acting weird. But I think I'm still streaming, so we'll find out in a second. My apologies. Yeah, I think I'm back. Thanks for holding on. Yeah. Yeah, my Firefox, so like the stream manager crashed, chat crashed, all the things crashed. Okay, whatever. Yeah, so why are we reading poetry and philosophy? No one likes us anymore in the Anglophone world. That means English-speaking world. Yeah, we're not well liked, are we, anymore? Whatever. Poets and philosophers are aligned, at least in respect to the difficulty of their modes of thinking, and this is telling since difficulty suggests a promise of substance and its avoidance the sense that it nevertheless isn't worth exploring. I tell my students that, as philosophers, their avoidance of poetry amounts to exactly this refusal to search for depth. This typically does not go down well. Yeah, I mean, if you tell people that they're lazy and they're just like refusing to like do any work, that's not the way it goes. Granted, maybe you have to find poetry that like they like, but I mean, people have rough lives nowadays, and you're asking them to do more work. And if they're in a philosophy course, they may not be expecting poetry. So, yeah. Claudia says, you got so used to using an ad blocker. Yeah, I've got like a background one, so it doesn't block all the ads, but I block a lot of them. Every once in a while you use Chrome or something, it freaks you out when you see the ads. Yeah, it's weird. It really is. When you go from like, once you realize how few ads you see and like the content is still there and it's good, then all of a sudden you've got like, you know, the ads all over the screen. It's like it feels crushing almost. And not going down well with you either? Yeah, well. Maybe one day, Ivan, you will find some poetry that speaks to you. I mean, you are someone who says that art has had a profound influence on you. So there is art that you do like, or has had a profound influence on you. I remember you saying that story. So, I mean, I can see that for other people, maybe poetry plays that role. Okay. In both philosophical and poetic practices, this difficulty is made productive in important ways. Maybe by the end of the article, yeah. Well, we'll see. Again, we're already halfway through, so it's like it's almost over. It arises in part not just because we each produce content that is challenging, but ultimately as a consequence of what Cora Diamond calls the difficulty of reality, that is, the sheer complexity of the world we struggle, each in our own ways, to render an object of attention. Yeah. So things are hard out there, folks. Our ways of writing are difficult, partly because of the difficulty of the historical, political, social, and psychological context we explore, which oblige both poet and philosopher to erect elaborate architectures of thought to capture it to whatever degree they can. Yeah, this is part of it. If you want to say something complicated and interesting about the world, you have to put time and effort into be like, I'm not saying this other stuff, I'm saying this thing over here. And you have to be careful about what you're saying, because as I was saying to DCI earlier, a lot of this shit been said. So if you want to say something new, you have to be ruling out an awful lot of background stuff. Unreal says, I'm fine with saying most modern poetry sucks, and I've sampled a fair amount. One poet you do like is Jim Harrison, good to know. Whereas there's some profound good poetry to be found in song lyrics. Yeah, good art is where you find it, you know? To paraphrase RoboCop. Do you really have to rule out the background stuff? If in professional philosophy DCI, if you want to be super clear and like have everyone be like, oh yeah, we understand what you're saying, then you have to do a lot of effort to rule out a lot of other theories in the neighborhood. Otherwise they'll be like, well, why didn't you just say what this guy said? And I have trouble with this because I don't want to do that. I just want to be like, here's the cool stuff. But then people will be like, well, how is this different from what that guy said? They won't automatically understand why it's good because they have to know like that you didn't say what has already been said. So it's part of just explaining why you care about something is showing that it's new and different. Yeah. Couldn't you just have the stance of who cares if someone said it before, I'm saying it now? Well, then why are you saying it now? Are you just being a cheerleader? Like, that's not the point of like writing stuff to say, hey, why don't you go read this? Because otherwise you should just go, you know, do a poetry reading of the old stuff or a philosophy reading of the old stuff. If you're going to write something new, the idea is you're going to write something different from what has been said. I do not have any idea what Vipers is talking about. Shaka when the walls fell. Okay, I'll have to take your word for it, Vipers. Yeah. This is why people still work on the ancients. Like, if you go read, like, you can go look up the stuff Aris has written now, because he doxed himself. But, like, he writes about, like, you know, ancient arguments and what there is different and new and still fresh about them that other people did not recognize. So it's like, that's the sort of thing. Punk's gatekeeping philosophy hard, yeah. Star Trek reference, okay. I'm sorry, I'm like kind of I don't know enough popular media. Okay, yet this difficulty functions very differently in poetry than in philosophy, and the way it does often makes poetry appear more honest, both as art and as a mirror of life. Philosophy's difficulty tends to be essentially intellectual and argumentative, a result of the need to engage in conceptual innovations along the road to providing a demonstration of some claim about the world being this way rather than that. And it strives, certainly in the form of analytic philosophy that dominates the Anglophone world, to do this clearly through disambiguation, precision of insight, and in general, making sense of the rough business of life. It is a continuation of the labor of the Enlightenment, at least in this small respect. Yeah. So this is part of, like, you're trying to be rigorous. That's part of the idea of, like, analytic philosophy, is to show things in a more scientific, rigorous way to rule out the stuff. It is just, maybe to answer your question better, it's part of the history, DCI, to do things in this sort of more technical way. TNG episode Darmok, where their universal translators didn't work with an alien species because their language was based on metaphors from their cultural experience. It was a critique of the poetic approach. Okay. So how the hell do you read all the 2,000 years of philosophy and avoid saying something has already been said? That's always trouble. This always happens. And that's the old joke, we're all footnotes to Plato. You don't, of course, but you read a summary of the Plato, you read a summary of the Aristotle, you go to school and you learn like a survey of what was said, and that way you have some idea of what the stuff is, and then when you get into it, you dig into it and you find out some things, are less talked about than others, and you go talk about that stuff. Simple. It's like you get summaries, you rely on the work of others, and that's all. But like that's everything else. Like you don't read 2,000 years of philosophy. But like all the programmers here, could you make a new app? Could you survey all the apps out there in the world? No. But could you go and like look up all the apps in your area and kind of see their functionality? Yes. You're not surveying everything. You survey what you're interested in. You could do that. You have done that, I'm sure, with whatever little computer like area you're in, because I know we got a bunch of computer people here. Yeah, and Ivan makes a great point. It's relative. You have to read more than the next guy. You don't read the whole of history. You just have to read more than the next person, woman, AI, agent, whatever have you. You just have to know more than the next person. That's all. Oh, yeah. Okay. It is here that poetry seems to know something that philosophy on the whole does not. A few of the continentals accepted. This something goes by many names, the most famous of which John Keats titled poetry's negative capability. Its willingness to rest with uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, and without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. Put differently, the poet knows how to lean into ambiguity, opacity, paradox, provisionality, and even nonsensicality, which often renders meaning in poetic context a destination one must struggle to reach, in part because this ambiguity is preserved and not washed away along the way. DCI says, what happens if you like X from Plato, Y from Kant, Z from the smelly guy, A from Marcus, and then how do you subscribe to a school, or do you settle on like this school of philosophy that suits me best if you've taken a Facebook quiz and Harry Potter house you're in? Yeah, I mean, depends what you're trying to do, of course, DCI. If you were trying to write academic philosophy, that's one thing. You better narrow down your scope at that point. If you're trying to learn something history or philosophy, yeah, that's cool. If you're just trying to have fun and you want to take an online quiz, that's cool too. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Yeah, Unreal Brian. Yeah, you're just trying to outrun some of the people in your area to make you think you had a good point. But these people, they're well read. This is their business. They look at the history. So yeah. How do I get to that? Because I'm a neo-cynic? Yes, basically. Yeah. I mean, I consider myself a neo-cynic. I don't know exactly what you're referring to right there, DCI, but yeah. Okay, yeah. So they're saying, look, you don't have to be clear in poetry, and that's okay, because that is an experience we have in itself. And so the fact that we don't need to explain things away in poetry means we can include more experiences. Philosophy hurts your brain? Yeah, it hurts everyone's brain. That's kind of the point. DCA is on the coke tonight? Yeah, he's trying to figure out how to start a philosophy business. Good luck there. Is there a particular writer you felt was my spirit bro? No. I mean, I like Wittgenstein in the grand scheme of things, but no one. I was just like, oh man, this is the shit. Nah, never happened. I was like, this shit's stupid mostly. How do I decide I'm a neo-cynic? Because I was like, look, the cynics basically break things down into um nature and then like convention. And this is also very Buddhist. So you've got nature and convention. And I was like, that's all I'm going to say. Like, we're just arguing over conventions mostly. And if it's not convention, what is it? It's going to be part of nature, just like something chaotic or regular, depending on how you break down nature. I'm more on the chaos side, but like basically, it's what we're doing. And then like everything else is just like, yeah, it's us. It's like the things we care about as opposed to nature, and that's about it. And so that's how I see the cynics moving through life. They just don't care about the conventions. They separate that stuff out. And it's like, well, why do you care about any of that? And then you stick closer to nature than you do with just like conventional reality. That's it. I'm too much of a hipster to be like other philosophers. I mean, maybe, but I am an oddball and I have the receipts at this point. So talking about philosophy is taking a nature walk. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to get stuff going there. So it's akin to choosing class in RPG. You read their attribute cares and you choose to focus in on it. I mean, that's kind of like all of life is like an RPG in that case. I mean, philosophy, anything. It's like, oh, you want to be a programmer? Like, I mean, all you computer guys, you know that basically that's what it is. There's a joke I saw going around that like the furries run the internet. Apparently, like this is like RPGs, computer games. We're on Twitch for God's sake. Like this is this is the sort of thing people like this like do. They like RPG. So, yeah. Oh, we're talking about computers. What? Yeah. So basically, like, could you design your life like it's an RPG? It's like, yes. Could you design your philosophy like an RPG? You're looking at the different like classes or whatever. That's one way to do it. But again, these are just categories. And then it's like, then you can get yourself into Kantian philosophy. Be like, oh, you're choosing which categories or whatever. Thank you, Kev, to you. So all this stuff is like, there's nothing so far away from philosophy. Like you're deciding what kind of life you want to lead. Well, okay, what skills are you going to develop? What class do you want to develop into? Are you like a white beard of like programming or like computer like mysteries and whatever? Are you going to go do something else? Yeah. Before I was a neo-cynic, were you anything else out of interest? I don't think I ever classified myself as anything. I've always been leaning analytic, although I've said this before, I'm philosophically promiscuous. I don't really mind other kinds of like I have a soft spot for Heidegger. I have a soft spot for a lot of continental philosophy. I really like phenomenology, but like that goes back to Husserl, so that could be technically analytic too. So yeah, like relearning. Can't even speak anymore. Command line interface. Yeah, exactly. So yes, that's what I was saying. So I never considered myself anything really. I just didn't focus. Like I never ever did any social philosophy, never really did any political philosophy in my advanced age. I'm considering it more now, but like it's just I was doing the logic-y, epistemology, metaphysics-y stuff, the very sort of like high analytic philosophies. For real, yeah. So go to. Yeah, I know. Well, I do feel slightly bad about my European peoples. So yes. If you're reeling Bertrand Russell as a teenager in college, I had a mentor who introduced you to Dewey, and he was the second philosopher who made any sense to you as your gateway to pragmatism. Yeah, and I like pragmatism too. Like Peirce was logic and pragmatism, and very close to a lot of Wittgenstein and a lot of things. So it's like that kind of goes back through this way too. So that definitely is in the neighborhood. All right. So here we go. Back to having confusion as a part of your work. Like in philosophy, you're not allowed to have like confusion, but in poetry, you're allowed to have confusion. So, and when a poet such as Ashbery for me preserves these forms of difficulty successfully, it registers in equal parts as a philosophical and poetic accomplishment, a way of elevating the messiness of life to the status of art. In doing so, these aspects of our world become an object of both scrutiny and aesthetic immersion. It is a way, as Nietzsche might put it, of making the terrible truths of this world tolerable by perception, by satisfying our desire both to encounter our world more intimately and not to be crushed by it in the process. At the very least, it is how this difficulty permits poetry to engage in powerful critique as well as exemplary art making. Open source IPS, okay, god damn it. That damn poetic license having the power to invent powers and a bunch of Cartmans, yes. Poetic justice. Well, the argument here is that there are more experiences allowable in poetry and in writing poetry than are, in some sense, allowed in philosophy. So does that give the poets greater range on the world? Yes, and there's something valuable there. That doesn't mean philosophy is without value. But it's like, again, the fact that they have more resources available to what they're doing, that also means there's something there. Tupac and Janet, yeah. Nietzsche is fun, but I feel like he's mostly venting and ranting. Nietzsche is a great philosopher. He's said a lot of stuff. He's also a great writer. And so a lot of times he is also venting and ranting. And so then you have to separate out the analytic claims that you can from him writing about stuff. And so if you want to talk about the philosophy as we describe it today, it's not the same thing as what, he is not displaying it in the same way. And so that he doesn't display the philosophy in the same way because he was actually writing better than most philosophers write. It's it's a difficulty nowadays. Apparently AI poetry reveals the truth of the world. Well, good luck with that. Because remember what it was trained on. The last 5 years of Reddit comments. If you think you're going to get the best understanding of the world from the last 5 years of Reddit comments, good luck. Okay. For on the assumption that our world too often is too often opaque, paradoxical, ambiguous, even nonsensical, a poem that captures these features of it in its very syntax and form will earn its claim to truth through its way with difficulty. This is one way that modern poetry pushes back against the unflattering features of our world, confronting its oppressiveness, ugliness, and vast blahness in the act of embodying it in poetic form. Yeah, so insofar as poetry can grab stuff from the world that philosophy doesn't do as well, that's good. This is very unlike philosophy's way with difficulty and is typically much more satisfying since it is more capacious in its ability to acknowledge these features of human predicament. And this brings into relief one good reason poetry should matter much more to philosophy than it presently does. Without poetry's extraordinary images of, in Diamond's words, the difficulty of reality, philosophy risks losing the most potent and precise images of the very thing to which its theories are supposed to be adequate, the mess that is both inside and around us. Well, I have a mess. I find that putting matters this way clarifies what I should really be doing with my students, perhaps not reading Ashbery to them so much as insisting that if they wish to become dangerous philosophers, then they must also study with the poets and critics on the floor above me. Okay, so there we go. That was a fun little paper. Let's give it a little rating. What do you think? Basically arguing, say, hey, look, if you're going to be a good philosopher, you have to actually go experience the full world. You can't sit in just look at your narrow slice of life that philosophy talks about, because that will just get, yeah. Well, if you're going to do meh, do the full vote meh, as you can see over that way. So do vote meh. So Ivan Neal says, nay, turd. Kant feels attacked, lol, okay. Yeah. So as always, anyone who's new here, you are free if you're in chat, both Kick, Twitch, type brain dance if it was kind of fun. Grapes if you thought it made big claims that shriveled up. Navel gazing only for academics. I mean, this was a public piece. I don't think it's that navel gazy. Ouroboros for deeper ancient ideas. Scream for existential or artistic drama. I'm going to give this a scream actually, because it is trying to bring in the artistic drama with the poetry. Then the turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath, and a nog knife for slicing and dicing arguments. We also have the global vote yay, vote nay for if you just thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumb sideways. Ivan says, if your world has all those contradictions and paradoxes, you need a new philosophy. Well, that's a very philosophical way of doing it. Again, it depends, I think, on your disposition. I live in a very messy world. I know how to solve some of the problems. I don't think I can solve all the problems. And so it's like, will I be able to get to a new philosophy? Probably not. And the best I'm going to be able to do at times is describe the problems as I see them. And in that case, it's like, well, I'm not just going to be dogmatic and be like, well, they don't exist. Like, that would be the wrong thing for me to do, is to just like be like, well, I'm not looking at those problems like la 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 la. Like, those problems are like out of my scope. I don't want to talk about them. I'd rather be able to understand them, or at least understand what other people have said about them. Maybe that will give me new insight and ways into solving problems. But like, there's things I can do, and then there's like the rest of the world that there's plenty of things that I'm not good at, you're not good at, and you can go find out. People have talked about these things, and sometimes learning about them actually, is helpful, what other people have said. So yeah. DCI says, I agree with the idea that you need to have a wide experience or a deeper experience into something and talk philosophically about it, but I am right that Kant lived and died in the same village and never really went out. Yeah, and so there's problems with what Kant said about the world. He was racist as fuck. A lot of other problems with his philosophy. His theories sound great, in the abstract. In practice, they quite often don't make sense. So it's like, yes, he made brilliant sounding theories and people love them, but like, do they actually ever work? I don't know. So it's like, yeah, you can be a great philosopher. That doesn't always mean you're a very good person. Or maybe just because you're very, very clever doesn't mean you should have written what you did. Yeah. But what if the world is made of contradictions and paradoxes? Well, you can go hang out with Graham Priest, who says that's how the world is. You can be a dialethist, where it says some things are both true and false. Then you are a dialethist. It's made of both contradictions and paradoxes. Yep. Ain't falling for no hypergeometric paradox pattern in my visual input. Exactly. It was true that Henry's mom was doing his laundry when he was living in his cabin. I've no idea who that is. Who's Henry? He never left Königsberg, but his day job was professor of geography. Academia was different back then, yeah. True and false quantum computers, yeah. So the logics that handle both true and false at the same time are actually in use in like quantum computing, in databases, because a lot of times in databases you get contradictory entries with a lot of like data that's coming in. And so if you have to have things that can handle ambiguities, we have systems for this now, and they're actually in production. This is Henry David Thoreau. I don't know. Hume, Aristotle, Ancients. I don't know what Adams said. Okay. He was very well read, yeah. Well, again, if you're going to say something different from the ancients, then you have to know what the ancients said. What am I going to say? I was going to say Scream. I'm going to go vote meh. I think I'm going vote meh. I hate going vote meh. But like, you know what? I hate vote meh. I'm just going to say Scream. I'm going to say Scream and then something else. Let's see. Maybe I won't say a whole lot else. I don't have to. I mean, I think the author has a point. It was a popular article. It doesn't need to be a great point. So like, they made their points. Like, okay, wouldn't it be better off if we could describe more of our world and then not impose the way we think about it on the world? We just need to describe it sometimes. Yeah. Unreal says, it's a difficult one. I think I disagree with the paper in serious ways, but it's too short to dig into why. For one thing, I think philosophy and poetry are more different than this, but I also think it was worthwhile to read, think about. Yeah. So that's kind of the difficulty with this article. I don't think the author is ridiculous. I think they have a point. You might disagree with them, but it was too short and too popular to be like, well, okay, what were the whole claims? That philosophy is worth something? Sure. But like, that's not a huge point. That philosophers should then also pay attention to what's going on in poetry, because poetry is worth something, philosophy is worth something, and they have different sort of materials. It's like, okay, yeah. All right, so DCI says, yeah, did get the juices flowing, at least for DCI. This didn't tell me anything I knew. It didn't get my like this was already my opinion on poetry, that like it had a wider range of application. That's what poetry is good for. You're not limited to like the analytic sort of arguments. So like it didn't make like I didn't give any like new ideas to me. You know, should I give it a vote yay or a vote meh? It's not a nay for me. I'll make a decision. This is part of the different. I'm gonna give it a yay. Okay. But yeah, thank you for voting. Thank you for giving it the grapes, Ivan. Appreciate the opinion. Mate, Biff, Chip, and Kipper get the juices flowing. Yes. If anyone else wants to get their, all right, your girls here, have a great night. And you know what might work? Read some poetry.